Hi guys, um, welcome back to this new week. I hope we had an awesome weekend. So in this video, I'm going to briefly talk about how to trade the news. I'm going to base the video on fundamental analysis. I will discuss what fundamental analysis really is, the applications that we use to check out fundamental events that are coming up in the week, and also how to interpret the data that the application gives us. And then lastly, I will discuss the last candlestick confirmation approach. Okay, so I could have gone online, but I was avoiding going online because I'm sure a number of us would be offline. Okay, so I didn't want anybody to miss out on anything, and that is why I thought it was best that I make a video so that you guys can watch it at any time. Okay, so what is fundamental analysis? So before I go into the discussion, I'm going to ask you guys to if you don't have the application, FX calendar, okay, so if you don't have this application, Forex calendar, you can go to your Play Store, Google Play Store, and just type FX calendar. It's got a logo that's it's reddish in color, and it's got FX in yellow. So get this application, because I'm going to show you how to interpret the data and how this application brings out the data for the week, and how to also how to interpret it. So firstly, what is fundamental analysis? Okay, fundamental analysis, we all know fundamental analysis is another word for trading the news events. And if you have noticed, we are very selective when it comes to trading news events at ZFC, and so I'm going to also write down a number of few events that we trade before I can go to the approach that we use when we look at the charts. Okay, the last candlestick confirmation pattern. So for the new ones, the newbies, fundamental analysis is basically trading news events. Okay, trading economic news events. Okay, so this is how it comes out. So for example, when you look at this application, FX calendar, it's a calendar, so it's got days from Monday to Friday, when different fundamental news from different countries are aligned. Okay, so there's timings and also days and also a countdown to when the data will be released. So fundamental analysis is apparently the only force that can affect a potential technical setup, and that's why it's important to understand fundamental analysis before you even understand the technical part of trading. All right, so I'll go straight into the calendar. So if you let me just show you a number of news events that you trade. So I'll give an example of the first one. So one, we have the CPI. So this is one of them. We also have the GDP. This is a gross domestic product. Okay, another one. Then lastly, I will discuss the interest rate decision. Interest rate decisions. Okay. Then I'll now discuss the one that we have this week from NZD, that's New Zealand. We have unemployment rate and net change in employment. So those two come out at the same time. So unemployment rate, unemployment rate. Okay. So all these are economic events that can affect how a currency performs in a period at which the data is released, depending on how the data comes out. Okay, so this is how you analyze. So basically, what's going to happen is you don't really need to stress much about the definition of CPI, GDP, interest rate, employment rate. All you need to understand is all these news pieces can affect how a country's currency performs in the period at which the data is released. So there are actually two ways. So the data can either come out positive, which is a plus for the economy, or the data can come out negative, which is a minus for the economy. And of course, you can relate that if CPI comes out better than expected, or rather plus, then we expect a bullish outcomes when it comes to the chart for whichever country or currency we're looking at. Same applies to these other pieces. So firstly, I'm going to introduce some really important terms. So if you open your application FX Calendar, you will notice that each news event has got a special way. It's there's a way it's if you find a news event on your calendar, you see something like previous. It's written like this. Okay, you see something like previous, then you see consensus, and you see actual. Okay, so those are the three terms that I need you guys to understand: previous figure, the consensus, and the actual figure. Okay, so what is the previous figure? What is the previous figure? The previous figure is if you're looking at the CPI, GDP, or unemployment rate. So the previous figure for the consumer price index, say we're looking at Canada or USA. So the previous figure is, mind you, these statistics are released almost every month for every country. So if you look at the previous figure, for example, there is 1.1 on the previous figure. Usually the application will show you what the previous figure was. It means last month the CPI for this country came out as 1.1. It's 1.1%. Okay. What is the consensus then? The consensus is simply the prediction that economists have given in that particular country, or maybe from the Reserve Bank of that particular country. So the consensus is based on a prediction using some economic models that they had used to say, okay, since last week we had 1.1%, and from what we have seen in this month, looking at the models and how things have been moving, we expect, for example, an increase from 1.1% to 1.2%. So 1.2% becomes the expectation. Okay, I need you guys to catch this part. The 1.2% becomes the expectation, and then we have the actual figure. The actual figure is the most important one. So if we get 1.3%, okay, if you see 1.3% becomes higher than 1.2%, that means this is a better than expected outcome. So what are we waiting for as investors? As investors, the entire countdown that you see on the application is for the actual figure. We'll be given the consensus and we'll be given the previous figure, but what we are looking out for is what's going to come out here, because the actual figure is what is going to determine the impact on the currency on the MetaTrader 4 platform. Okay, so say we're waiting for our previous figure is 1.1, consensus was 1.2, and then we get a 1.3. The fact that 1.3 is above 1.2, which was the expectation, it becomes better than expected. And whenever you get a better than expected outcome, the potential impact on the currency is a bullish impact. So that's a positive outcome. So the currency is likely going to buy. That's why we buy. Okay, so the same thing applies. If we had a previous figure of 1.1%, we have the consensus at 1.2%, and then we get a figure that's below the previous. So say we get 1.0% instead here. That means the figure is worse than expected. Why? Because the expectation is 1.2% and the previous figure was 1.1%. So the actual figure came out, it beat both the consensus and the previous figure in the negative direction. So this is a worse than expected outcome. And when you get a worse than expected outcome, then what you expect on the currency in the MT4 platform is a negative impact. That means you are looking to be a seller in such an impact move. All right. So the question is, since we are not given the actual figure usually, how do we, the consensus sometimes may not be accurate. How do you know the potential direction the market will take before the figure is released? So that's what we're going to do now. The approach, the last candlestick confirmation approach, which is usually correct, let me say 9 times out of 10 in most cases. So that's what I'm going to show you. So this previous consensus actual, this is what you need to understand now to analyze the news using the application that I showed you that you have to get. and then this applies on CPI, GDP, and unemployment rate. I'll talk about interest rate decision later. So I'll go straight into the charts, how to read, approach, how to trade fundamental analysis or impact events using the last candlestick confirmation approach. So here is a secret. So let's take, for instance, we have, for example, what we have coming up on Wednesday or Thursday. That's NZD New Zealand labor market data. Okay. Another word for the labor market data is unemployment rate or net change in employment. So the expectation, from what I checked, if you can check your calendar, the expectation currently for the NZD news is that it's going to come out negative, because they are saying the unemployment rate is likely going to drop by a point. So if you check, you see something like 3 point something to 4.0 from 3.9. So that's like a negative outcome on unemployment rate. And then the net change in employment is also expected to drop according to the consensus. But that's just an idea, that's not enough. So looking at how the currency pairs will position themselves, there's a way we are able to determine the possible direction the currency is going to take using the H4 time frame. So for in the H4 time frame, say, let me give an example of NZD-USD. Let's say we're looking at NZD-USD, and we're talking about a few minutes before the data is released. So let's say this is my theoretical chart, NZD-USD, and it's currently here at this point. Okay, so we have our technical whatever is there, but let's say currently this is where NZD-USD is. This is our chart. So this is bullish, bearish, bullish, and then currently it's consolidating, awaiting the news. So what you need to take note of, I need you to get this, what you need to take note of is the last candlestick. So we're looking at the H4 confirmation, and mostly the NZD news comes out after 23 hours. So let's say this is our 23-hour candlestick, this one. Okay, that's our 23-hour candlestick. So let's say the news is coming at 03:30. So which candlestick are we interested in? The last candlestick. So if we look at the H4 time frame, so 23 hours plus 4 takes us to 03 hours. Okay, so this is the candlestick we're interested in. So this is the 23-hour one. So after 03, 4 hours plus 23, we get a new candlestick. Okay, this is the one we're interested in. So a new candlestick. What this candlestick is going to behave a few minutes before, the behavior of this candlestick a few minutes before the news release can give us an idea of where the impact is likely going to go, like where the direction of the news. So for example, here's a simple secret. So if at 03 the candlestick that forms is a bullish candlestick, get me clearly, if a candlestick that forms at 03 a few minutes before the news goes bullish, so if we have a white candle at 03, this is my white candlestick at 03, okay, it's bullish, then the likelihood of impact being negative is very high. And that's why if you notice a candlestick pushing up a few minutes before the news is released, you simply place your sell stop orders right below the white candlestick. Okay, below the white, not on the body, but right below the candlestick. So these will be your sell stop orders. Okay, awaiting impact. So immediately the news is released, what happens is the white candlestick becomes a wick. Okay, a wick simply is an indication of momentum. So usually if we're going to have a very huge shift in the downward direction, the candlestick will always have that cutoff wick, and that's why when we notice a white candlestick a few minutes before the news, the chances are that the outcome will be bearish, so that the white candlestick will now become the wick signifying impact. So by the time the news is released, we'll have something like this to trigger your sell stop, and everything below your sell position and the candlestick is profit. So what did I say? The secret is, what is the last candlestick? So if the news is coming out at 14 or rather 15, just look at the timings. Remember, we're trading the H4 time frame, and observe the candlestick that is going to come immediately before the news is released, and look at the behavior of that candlestick. If it's a white candlestick, then the likelihood of a negative impact is very high. And if it's a black candlestick, the likelihood of a positive impact is also very high. So this works well if the candlestick agrees with the consensus. Okay, so you just place your sell stop below the candlestick or place your buy stop above the black candlestick. I'm sure the point is clear, and we have the opportunity to actually apply this this knowledge this week, because we have a number of high impact news that are coming up, and we'll be able to share with you guys our bias a few minutes, or rather a few hours before the news is released. Okay, so we'll be observing these pairs, and we have one technical shift, one technical setup currently on NZUSD, and I think we'll hold a bit because of the impact that's coming. So the impact news that's coming is going to determine where exactly it's going to go, but we'll still share it so that you guys can look at it, because it's a very good opportunity. So I'm sure what we explained here is quite clear, but if you have any questions on this, please be sure to comment on the group, so that as we respond to your questions, others are also able to benefit. Alright, so avoid coming straight to our inbox, because it might take us a bit long to reply. So come post on the group, and then we'll be able to respond to your queries. So that's the simple ZFC fundamental analysis, or rather impact approach. So get the application FX Calendar. If you don't have MT4 and you're new, get MetaTrader 4 platform, and also check out the news events we have for the week, and make sure you apply what we have just taught. Alright, so have a nice and a blessed week, and see you on the other side.